Hello and welcome back. If you're new to my channel, I make videos about paring down and living with what is currently a 50-item wardrobe. And today I want to talk about what I call the warm to cool spectrum and how identifying where you fall on that spectrum can be a really effective way to streamline and simplify your wardrobe. Now, determining these categories that I now call warm and cool is something that I sort of stumbled upon naturally as I was clearing out my wardrobe, but it's still really important to me today in maintaining a small wardrobe. So what do I mean by warm and cool? I'm not talking about color. Let's get into it. The things that I categorize on the warm side of the spectrum tend to have a more natural or organic or sometimes unfinished vibe to them. I typically think of browns, suedes, chunky knits regardless of color, anything with ruffles or lace. A lot of patterns to me fall on the warm side of the spectrum, especially anything that's floral or plaid, and even some finishes of leather I classify as warm, like pebble leather, distressed leather, or even distressed jeans to me fall on the warm side of the spectrum. On the cool side of the spectrum, I typically think of blacks. I think of clean, simple lines. I think of silks and other smooth fabrics or items that have a bit more structure to them. As far as leather finishes, I think of basically any smooth leather like Saffiano leathers or patent leathers or any smooth leather with minimal embellishment to it. I also put trainers and tennis shoes on the cool side of the spectrum because they are definitely not organic or natural looking. So in general, things that have a bit more finish to them, that are a bit more polished, I put on the cool side of the spectrum. Now, I'm calling these categories warm and cool, but you could also think of it as a spectrum between very natural, organic, sort of unfinished items to incredibly finished, polished, not organic at all on the cool side. So I found two pairs of boots on Pinterest that I think have a very similar shape, and I will pop the ones that I think are warm over here and the cool ones over here. Now, the warm ones, I would classify these as warm because they're made of suede. It has a sort of earthy vibe. They have a less polished finish. There's a slight contrast in the stitching, and there's a visible stacked wooden heel where you can see the grains of wood. Again, natural, organic-y vibe. On the other side, I would classify these boots as cool because it's a much smoother leather. It has very minimal embellishment, and you can't see any stitches at all. So warm to cool. In order to illustrate a little bit better what I mean by cool and warm, I put together two Pinterest boards to show you what I mean in more detail. So if I click into the warm board, I'll just give you an overview of some of the images I put together. So warm looks, I would classify this look as warm. This sweater that this woman is wearing has like a visible weave. The weave is big enough that sort of stands out as a detail in the outfit, and I would put that on the warm end of the spectrum. The bag that she's wearing is made of a smooth leather, but the bag itself is kind of slouchy, and so I would rate that as warm as well. And she's wearing brown suede boots, which to me altogether gives this a very warm look. Here again, the lines in this outfit are very simple, but again, you can see some of the weave in the sweater that this woman is wearing. And though the lines in this duster or long sweater that this woman is wearing are pretty simple, there's still a little bit of slouchiness. So I would put that, and it looks like the finish of the sweater itself is unhemmed, or the hem is sort of exposed, which I would also classify as warm. There's some distressing on the jeans, and again, suede boots, which I think puts this look on the warm side of the spectrum. If I go over to my cool board, you get a little bit of a different vibe, or a lot of bit of a different vibe. So here, I think this look contrasts the warm looks pretty strongly. This woman is wearing a black puffer vest, which is very it doesn't look very natural or organic. I would say this looks kind of manufactured, not really in a bad way, but in a way to put it on the cool end of the spectrum. She's also wearing black rain boots, which have very simple lines, but I would say that this falls on the cool side of the spectrum. Here, whenever I say warm and cool, I'm really not talking about color, and I think that this image illustrates that well. I would classify both of these outfits, which are basically identical, as cool, because even though the colors are warm, the lines in the outfit and the fact that both of these women are wearing sneakers, I think puts these outfits on the cool side of the spectrum. I'll do one more. Let's go with this one. All right, so again, very clean lines. There's very minimal embellishment. This buckle here is really the only thing that I notice in terms of hardware. The fabrics look very sleek and smooth, and the finish of the leather is also very sleek and smooth, so I would classify this as cool. Now, I think it's important to call out that warm and cool is not a division of casual and formal. You can have both casual and formal on either side of the spectrum. And I put myself on the cool end of the spectrum, but my clothing is predominantly casual, so cool definitely does not mean formal. I discovered that I lean towards the cool end of the spectrum sort of naturally as I was paring down my wardrobe, but now that I know that, it helps me to avoid items that aren't in line with the overall cool tone of my wardrobe, especially when it comes to accessorizing with things like bags and shoes, those really high mileage items that I need to be able to coordinate with the rest of my closet. Now, I call this a warm to cool spectrum because I think there are definitely items in the middle that are neutral or could go either way. And you can certainly combine warm and cool items to create really interesting looks. People do it all the time. I also think that particular styles like preppy or romantic or whatever can have looks that can fall on either side of the spectrum. But if you want to, you can use the warm to cool spectrum on top of whatever style you have some affinity for to be able to narrow the scope of your wardrobe even further. God, I hope that made sense. And of course, you don't have to do any of this. This is just something I've found really effective. And I think it's something that we do on some level unconsciously anyway, but by making it a conscious part of how we evaluate items or how we create looks, I think it can be a really effective way to streamline and simplify our wardrobes. There you have it. It was a quick little tip, but it's been useful for me, so maybe you'll find it useful as well. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.